Morning came like a careful hand. No rush. No loud talk. The room held its breath and did not break. Lena woke before her alarm. She lay still and listened to the soft city sounds she did not know yet. The far bell of a tram, a bicycle somewhere on smooth street, a door below closing once. She got up, washed her face, put on the small drop of scent she had brought for days that asked for courage, and tied her hair back like someone going to work. This was work and love and a promise, all at once. In the hall she met Cassandra. No words, only a nod that said we keep going. Thomas stood by the window knotting his tie, not because he needed a tie, but because hands like to do things when the head is too full. Evan checked the small bag he always checked and the list he always read, then slipped the list back into his pocket without looking at it. They were all steady in the way you get steady when you have decided to be. A woman from the clinic knocked and came in with a kind voice that did not ask for anything. She said she would come back later. She said there was no hurry. She said the word today without putting pain around it. Then she left them alone again. Adrian was up, awake, and clear. He looked at each of them and let his eyes rest, one by one. "Good morning," he said, simple as tea. He did not make a joke. No one asked him to. There were conversations that had to happen. Private ones first. The doctor met with Adrian alone, then with him and the family together. The questions were plain. Is this what you want? Do you understand what happens next? Has anyone pushed you? Do you wish to stop? Adrian answered carefully, not angry, not defensive, just exact. He thanked the doctor for speaking to him like a man who knew his own mind. The doctor nodded and said he would return when they were ready. He did not say a time. He said, "We will follow your pace." They were given a quiet room with a big window and a plant that did not try too hard. On the table sat water in a glass, a cloth, and nothing else. The sunlight lay across the floor like an honest thing. They had hours. They used them. Cassandra went first, because mothers go first when the heart is heavy. She sat close, but not hovering. She took his hand the way you hold a cup you love and fear to drop. "I am proud of you," she said. "From the beginning, before you were clever or strong. From the day you were loud and red and angry to be born. From the day you fell off the garden wall and told the wall it should be ashamed. From the day you learned to say sorry without making it sound like a favor." She smiled then, a small broken smile that was still a smile. "I am proud of the last months most. You let us love you again without hiding behind jokes. Thank you." He swallowed. "Thank you for not giving me speeches I could not carry," he said. "Thank you for the ones you did give me when I needed a wall." Thomas took his turn like a man stepping onto a narrow bridge. He did not sit. He stood beside the chair and laid a hand on its back, as if to say he knew the machine and the sun were both real. "I have nothing clever," he said. "I don't want a last line. I want you to know I enjoyed losing at chess to you last week. I enjoyed being told I was wrong about that film. I have enjoyed being your father. I am very tired of being brave, and I will keep being brave, because it is my job and my privilege. That is all." Adrian's mouth trembled once, then set. "You were a good father the whole time," he said, "even when I pretended not to notice." Evan did not try to speak well. He leaned in, squeezed Adrian's shoulder gently, and said, "It has been an honor. Thank you for trusting my hands." Adrian nodded. "Thank you for teaching them," he said. Then it was Lena. They were alone for a little while, on purpose. The door clicked shut softly behind her. She sat in the chair beside him and let the quiet find its level. "I don't have the right words," she said, and she meant it. "Then don't try for the right ones," he said. "Try for true. True is this," she said. "You gave me back my own voice. You told me to buy the pencil. You told me to put my name on my days. You made me stop being small out of habit. I love you. I want to keep you. I will not keep you by asking you to live a life you cannot live." He breathed out. It was almost a laugh and almost a cry. "You were the best last thing," he said. "I did not expect to have a best last thing." She put her hand in his. He turned his palm and held her fingers. They stayed like that a long time, not counting it. "Read me something," he said at last. "Not heavy. A page that knows how to begin and end." She opened her bag and found a small book with short chapters. She read a piece about a street where a baker opens the shutter at dawn and air fills with warm promise. His breathing slowed to the rhythm of the sentences. When she finished, he said, "I can smell it." She smiled, because she could too. They did not make a list of memories. They let them arrive. The lemon tart that tasted like sunlight. The bend in the road where the view comes all at once. The reception where a band played a song too fast, and they danced anyway. The smell of proofing bread outside a classroom window. The way the light falls at 5 in the evening on their own garden at home. The line he once gave her about winter rivers and the sound they make. "We did well," she said. "We did," he said. "We did not waste the squares." When the doctor returned, he knocked and waited. Adrian said, "Come," in that calm voice he had found again in the last week. The doctor explained once more, without rush. He did not describe everything. He did not ask them to watch anything they did not want to watch. He asked Adrian to confirm, again, that this was his will. Adrian did. He asked if there was anything else they needed. There wasn't. There was everything, and also nothing anyone could bring. Cassandra and Thomas kissed their son's forehead, hair, cheek, and moved to the side of the room where they could still see him. Evan stood back, steady and near. Lena remained where she was, holding Adrian's hand. He asked her to keep talking, so she did, softly, telling him small things. The color of the tram outside, the shape of a cloud that looked like a folded napkin, the way the plant by the window leaned toward the light like good advice. When it was time, the room went very still. The doctor's voice was low. The nurse's hands were sure. No one hurried. Lena felt Adrian's fingers relax in hers, and kept holding them anyway. His face let go of effort and became itself. No argument, no mask, no brace. It happened like a breath that does not need to return. No drama, no noise. Just the day stepping over a line and not stepping back. Cassandra made a sound and covered it with her hand. Thomas set his palm on the wall as if the wall could steady him. Evan looked at his watch because that was part of his job, and then looked away because it was also his friend. Lena waited. She did not speak. She did not move. After a time, the doctor nodded once and said, "He is at peace." And the words were not a slogan. They were a fact. They were given time. The staff left. The plant was still green. The window was still a window. The world had not cracked open, and yet it had, inside them, where no one could see. Lena leaned forward and put her forehead to the back of his hand. "Thank you," she whispered, for what she did not need to finish. He would have known. Cassandra came and touched Lena's shoulder, not to pull her away, just to say we are together. Thomas cleared his throat and could not find a sentence, then decided not to try. Evan placed a tissue on the table and pretended it mattered to set it neatly. At some point, the doctor returned. There were papers because the world always needs papers. Thomas signed where the lines asked. Cassandra wrote her name as if it were a prayer. Evan checked details that would keep the next steps smooth. Lena stood by the window and looked out at the tram line, the dull shine of the track, the ordinary miracle of people going places with shopping bags and coffee cups. They left the room gently. The nurse with the steady gaze met them in the hall. "I am sorry for your loss," she said, and meant it. Outside, the air had changed temperature by a degree. The day did not know. Birds made the same small noises they had made in the morning. Someone across the street laughed at something private, and then looked guilty for laughing, and then laughed again. No one wanted food. They ate anyway. The small restaurant on the corner served soup that tasted like simple kindness and bread that held together. The server did not chatter or stare. He filled water glasses with the same care he would use any other day. That helped. Later, back at the lodging, practical work arrived because practical work always walks in after grief, a bag to close, messages to answer, a call to the house sitter who was watering the roses. Cassandra called a friend who would call the others. Thomas called the lawyer whose number he hated having and was glad to have. Evan wrote a note to the night staff at the clinic to say thank you with spelling and full stops, because that is how you respect people who do hard work well. Lena stepped out onto the small balcony. Evening sat there like a quiet person. The tram made its soft bell and moved on. She reached into her coat pocket and found the letter she had written to herself. She read it. You can do hard things kindly. Breathe. Hold his hand when he reaches for yours. Drink water. Look at the sky. She had done those things. She added one more line with a borrowed pen. Keep going. Her phone buzzed once. Maya, I am here. That was all. It was enough. When she went back inside, Cassandra held out an envelope like the one she had given Lena at the door that morning. For later, she said, and Lena understood this was something else, a different later, a different envelope. She slid it into her bag and did not look. They did not talk long. The kind of tired they felt is not fixed by talking. They sat, each with their own thoughts, and let the day be what it was. After a while, Lena stood. I'm going to write, she said. In your book? Cassandra asked, as if the book had become part of the family. In my book, Lena said. She sat at the small desk and opened to a clean page. She drew a line that curved and then opened like a door. It was not the headland. It was not the balcony. It was a path that did not belong to a place yet. She drew slow, steady shapes beside it until the white space felt less loud. When she put the pen down, her hands shook a little, then stilled. Night came. They did not sleep well. They slept enough. Morning would be a different kind of work. Calls, a return flight, the first steps into a house that knew everything and nothing. There would be flowers that invited themselves and a chair by a window that would be only a chair for a while. There would be silence and then noise and then silence again. For now, the city breathed around them. A tram hummed past. Somewhere, a baker opened the shutter and let warm air out into the street. Lena closed her eyes and pictured the bend in the road where views arrive all at once. In her mind, it was not far. She could almost feel the wind change. She slept. They flew back the next day. No one spoke much. Airports are loud and busy, but inside their small group, it was very quiet. The plane took off. Clouds rubbed the windows like slow white animals. Lena sat beside Cassandra and watched her breathe out in small, careful pieces, the way people do when they are holding more than lungs can carry. Thomas stared at the seatback card and did not turn the page. Evan closed his eyes now and then, 10 minutes at a time, and woke ready. Home smelled like rain and hall wax. Grandma house looked the same. It was not the same. A vase of lilies on the console table had opened a little more. The calendar still hung by the bookcase. The small dot was now a date they had met and crossed. Nobody touched it. The chair by the window was there too, patient and still. Evan unplugged the smallest machine first. He did everything slowly, with respect, as if saying thank you in a language that used hands instead of words. Cassandra folded a blanket and placed it in a drawer. Thomas stood with his palm on the back of the chair for a long moment, then stepped away. Tea? Lena asked, because sometimes making tea is how you put the floor back under your feet. Yes, Cassandra said. Her voice was soft, not broken. Thomas nodded. Evan said, please, and rubbed his face as if washing without water. They sat with cups and the steam that means normal. Steam rose and vanished. The house took a first breath in this new shape and held it. The next days came like pages you turn because you must. People arrived. The doorbell sounded more often. Friends brought food that could survive a fridge and be warmed without thought. A neighbor left a note through the letterbox. We are here for whatever you need. A card with too many words and a card with only 2 words with love sat side by side on the mantel and did the same job. There were calls to make. The clinic in Switzerland sent what needed sending with quiet efficiency. The doctor at home called to say he was sorry. The lawyer asked them to come in next week. The florist asked about colors and said she could make the arrangements look alive without shouting. Cassandra said, thank you. and they both cried a little and pretended they were not. They planned a memorial, not a show. A short gathering at the old hall, open windows, chairs spaced wide, time for people to stand and speak or sit and listen. The band from the wedding sent a message. We can play, if you like, no charge. Cassandra wrote back, thank you, but no band. A single song will do. She chose a piece Adrian had liked lately, something clear and human. Thomas picked a reading that was not religious, but was kind. Evan said he would not speak. Then he did. 3 short sentences that took all his strength and were perfect. Lena asked what she could do. Cassandra handed her a list that was mostly small things. Order programs. Check the hall's access again. Ask the caretaker about a quiet room for anyone who needs to step out. Make a sign for the door that says simply, you are welcome. Come as you are. Lena did them. She did them well. Work was a rope across a bad river. At night, in her own room, she opened her sketchbook. She drew lines that curled and opened and made space for breath. She tried to put the day on the page and then stopped trying, because days like this do not fit. She wrote one sentence instead. The house is the same, and it is not. Maya came every other evening, baby on her hip, bread in her bag. She did the washing up without asking and made noisy jokes on purpose because silence is a heavy guest. When Lena's eyes filled, Maya did not say don't cry. She said, cry here, and handed her a clean tea towel. The Memorial Day was bright and cool. People came in pairs, in threes, alone. They stood awkwardly, and then less so. The hall smelled of old wood and fresh flowers. The photo on the table showed Adrian in neither tuxedo nor ski gear. It was a simple picture by a window, his mouth tilted the way it had tilted when something pleased him and he did not want to admit it. Lena stood near the back, ready to help and ready to disappear. She watched faces find the chair under them. She watched shoulders rise and drop and steady. Sometimes grief looks like quiet posture work. Thomas spoke first. Thank you for coming, he said. We will not be long. He told one small story about Adrian as a boy and one small story about him as a man after the accident. He did not try to make them match. That honesty made the room breathe. Cassandra did not go to the front. She stood where she was and said, he was our son. She let the sentence sit. It was enough. Evan said, he trusted me with hard days. I am grateful. He stepped back quickly so his voice would not shake in public and shook in private instead behind a pillar where no one could see, but everyone knew. A man from Adrian's old office came and talked about how clever Adrian had been. Then he stopped, looked at the picture by the window, and said, kind, too, as if he had just remembered. That was the moment that felt most true. Later, people came to Lena in a gentle stream. They said thank you for looking after him. They said they had seen him outside again this spring, and it had made their day. They said they were sorry for her. She said thank you, and yes, and I'm all right. She was not all right. She was also all right enough to say it. After everyone had gone, the hall smelled like flowers and coats. Thomas locked the door. Cassandra kept the spare key in her hand for a while before dropping it into her bag. The 4 of them, parents, nurse, companion, stood on the steps and did not know whether to go left or right. The choice felt big and silly. They laughed a little at themselves and went left, because left was where the car was. The next morning, Lena helped Cassandra with 2 hours of small jobs. They put away the guest cups. They took down the spare chair in the spare room and leaned it carefully against the wall. They gathered the papers from the dining table into neat piles. They did not try to sort the big things. Not yet. They opened one drawer in the sitting room and closed it again. Too soon. They opened a cupboard and found board games. Cassandra touched the lid of the chess set. Keep it here, she said quietly, for when we can stand to see it. On a higher shelf sat the heavy blue mug Adrian liked. Cassandra took it down, turned it in her hands, then held it out. Will you? She asked. Lena held the mug. It felt solid and warm. Yes, she said. She did not cry. She put it carefully in her bag. 2 days later, they went to see the lawyer. His office smelled of paper and polish. He spoke in clear sentences and did not make the moment theater. He went through the pages in order. Then he looked up and softened his voice. "There are personal letters," he said. "I delivered most already. And there is one for Miss Hart." He slid an envelope across the desk. Lena knew the handwriting without needing to be told. The envelope was thick, her name clean across the front. Ms. Lena Hart. No other words. No open now. No later. Just her name. Her hands did the brave thing her chest could not do yet. She did not open it. She slipped it into her bag with the mug and her sketchbook. The lawyer continued. "There are some bequests," he said. "Small gifts to the clinic, to the local library, to a bursary fund. A gift for Mr. Evan. If you will accept it." Evan shook his head and then nodded because it was not about him, and a sum set aside for Miss Hart. "It is written for study, for travel, for making a bigger life. The exact use is your choice." He was clear about that. Lena's eyes blurred. She pressed her fingers to her brow once, then dropped her hand. "Thank you," she said, because there was nothing else to say that would not break her voice. Cassandra reached for Lena's hand under the table and squeezed it once. Thomas cleared his throat, not because he had words, but because old habits steady you when new facts tilt the room. Outside the office, the sky had that white, washed look cities get after rain. They stood on the pavement, for people not quite sure which way to turn again. "Come for tea," Cassandra said. "Another time," Evan said. "You three go. I'll see you in the morning." He walked away with his careful stride, head up, shoulders set, the way people walk who keep other people safe. At the house, they sat with tea and let the future enter the room without announcement. Cassandra said, "You must use what he left you." It was not an instruction. It was faith. Thomas said he wanted it, and that was permission. "I will," Lena said. "I don't know how yet. I will." After tea, she went home and laid the envelope on her desk. She touched the edge once. She did not open it. She put it under her sketchbook like a note she could feel in the wood. She washed her face and went to class. The classroom smelled like pencils and glue. The teacher smiled at her and said nothing heavy. Only, "Tonight we draw circles." The sound of graphite on paper filled the room like rain. It calmed her. She drew a circle and then another until the page looked like a small sky. On the bus home, a boy fell asleep, head on his mother's arm. The mother shifted carefully so he would not wake. Lena watched and thought, love is often this small moves, steady hands, no speech. Days found a rhythm. Lena kept helping at the house a few hours each morning. It was not her job now. It was something else, care in a different shape. She made lists for Cassandra because lists are soft ladders. She walked the garden with Thomas because walking beats sitting when your head is loud. She texted Evan when a delivery came and put it where it should go. She wrote the words "thank you" on 10 cards and posted them. In the afternoons, she worked on her course. She made patterns that hid and revealed. She learned how to turn a drawing into a print. She submitted a small portfolio for a longer program she had not dared to think about before. She did not tell anyone yet. The act of sending was enough. She saw Neil once by the fruit stall near the station. He looked well. He held a bag of oranges like a medal. He said hi. She said hi. He said he had a race next month. She said she hoped he had good weather. They both smiled and moved on. It felt complete. One evening, Lena walked to the headland by herself. The air was clear and sharp. The path was the same long bend. The view arrived when it was ready, all at once, as always. She stood where they had stood and did not try to make a speech to the sky. She took the envelope from her bag and looked at it in that light, then put it back. Not yet. She sat on the low wall and drew the curve of the horizon with her fine pen, slow and steady. A dog came by and leaned its head against her knee. She scratched behind its ear, and the dog looked at her like she had made the right choice. She laughed out loud, a small, honest sound. Near the end of the week, Cassandra invited Lena to stay for supper again. It was soup and bread, the kind of food that forgives long silences. After, Cassandra brought a box into the sitting room, and set it on the rug. "Photographs," she said. "We will not do them all today. We will choose 5 for the wall and put the rest away until we can look again." They went through the stack slowly. There was Adrian at 6, muddy-faced and victorious with a ruined white shirt. There he was at 14, mouth set like a challenge, hair too long. There he was at 25, the smile a little tired from laughing at parties. Then later photos, his mouth a line, then a softer shape, then the mouth Lena knew, stubborn and true. "This one," Cassandra said, holding the picture of him by the window with the small, not-quite smile. "This is who I see when I think of him now." She did not look away from the picture as she spoke. The man who found a way to tell the truth without knocking the room down. They framed 5 and put the box away. Thomas hung the frames with a tape measure and a pencil behind his ear because doing it right is love too. Lena stood back with Cassandra and made small adjustments. Left a touch, down a touch. There. Good. When she left that night, the hallway felt different. Not healed. Arranged. The house felt rearranged, not healed, like a sentence with new punctuation they were still learning to read. At home, the envelope waited. Lena made tea in the heavy blue mug and sat at her desk. She ran her thumb under the seal and then stopped. She did not need the letter's words to tell her what to do next. She already knew one thing. She would go. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Soon. To a place he had once wanted her to see. Perhaps the city with the river and the long bridges that look like drawn lines. Paris. Or somewhere else where the air would make sense. She would carry the letter there and open it where the day felt wide. She turned her sketchbook to a fresh page and wrote "Go" at the top. Under it she made a list in small, neat letters. Passport, train or plane, a cheap room with a window, a notebook, good shoes, courage. She drew tiny boxes next to each item and ticked one. Courage, even though she didn't feel it fully yet. Sometimes you tick the box first and grow into it. The next morning brought a message from the program she had applied to. "We are pleased to offer you a place," it said. She read it twice and then laughed alone in her kitchen, a quiet, disbelieving laugh that made her feel light. She texted Maya a single word, "Yes." Maya sent back 6 exclamation points and a voice note of the baby clapping at nothing. Lena walked to Grana House with the news warm in her pocket and told Cassandra and Thomas over tea. Cassandra put her hand over Lena's and said, "Good." Thomas smiled, the kind of smile men smile when they are trying not to cry. Evan came in mid-sentence, heard the word offer, and grinned. "About time," he said. They stood for a moment in a small circle that did not need to be called anything. Then, like people with lives, they went back to their work. There were papers to file. There was a bin to take out. There was a plant to water. There was the rest of the day. On her way out, Lena paused by the calendar. A new month had begun. Empty squares waited. She lifted the pen and wrote a single word, "Begin," and set it down. She stepped into the afternoon, letter in her bag, a plan the size of a page in her pocket, and a life that felt both strange and hers. The sky was a clean, light blue. Somewhere a tram bell rang in her memory, and somewhere else the sound of the sea answered. She walked toward the station, toward a ticket she had not bought yet, toward a city she could already see in lines and light. She did not look back, not because she was leaving them, because she was carrying them with her. She chose the train because it lets the world unfold. No rush of air, no sky that steals your sense of place. Fields slid by, then towns, then a thin line of river that kept pace like a friend. Lena sat by the window with a small bag, a notebook, the fine pens, and the heavy blue mug wrapped in a scarf. The letter lay under the notebook, still sealed. She could feel its weight without touching it. Across the aisle, a boy played cards with his grandmother and lost on purpose. A woman 2 rows ahead knit a small blue hat. The carriage held the soft sound of people going somewhere they had picked on purpose. Lena breathed and let that be enough. When the train eased into the city, everything looked familiar from pictures and somehow new in the way of places you finally meet. The station was a rush of voices and light. She followed signs without hurrying and found the street that would be hers for 3 nights. The room she had booked was small and good. A window looked down on a bakery and a line of bicycles. She set the mug on the desk and the letter beside it, and stood for a moment with her hands on the windowsill. Outside, a baker pulled up a shutter. Warm air moved up and into her room as if invited. She smiled because the smell was the same one from the page she had read to him. It felt like a nod from the day. She walked with no plan except to walk. The streets made their own map for her feet. She turned where it felt kind to turn. She crossed a bridge that knew how to hold people without fuss. The river slid under her like a long sentence that did not need a full stop yet. She stopped in a bookshop that tilted a little and bought a postcard with a drawing of rooftops. She sat on a low wall and drew the same line with her pen, just to mark the fact that she was here. She did not open the letter that day. It felt wrong to rush. She sent a photo of the rooftops to Maya. "You made it," Maya wrote back. "Eat something you can't pronounce." Lena laughed and bought a pastry with a name she said badly and ate it anyway. Flakes on her coat, sugar on her lip. A woman at the next table smiled and passed her a napkin. "First day?" the woman asked. "Yes," Lena said. "The first." In the late afternoon, she stood at the edge of the river and watched the water change color as the light shifted. People leaned on the railing and said small things to each other that only mattered to them. A man played a tune on a clarinet that sounded like a street singing to itself. Lena stayed until the air cooled and the lamps made puddles on the pavement. Then she went back to her room, washed her face, tried to read, could not, and slept like someone who had finally stopped holding a heavy thing. She woke early on the second day. The sky was a pale, brave blue. This was the day. She put the letter and the blue mug in her bag and walked to a quiet garden she had noticed by chance the day before, a square with iron railings, a bench under a tree with low, kind branches, a view of rooftops. Sparrows scratched at the path and then decided she was harmless. The city hummed beyond the gate. Here, it was almost still. She set the mug on the bench beside her, the letter on her lap. For a minute, she only looked at her name in his writing. Not neat like a machine. Exact like a person who knows where to put things. Ms. Lena Hart. She ran a finger under the seal and opened it carefully so the paper wouldn't tear. The sheet inside was thick and smooth. She unfolded it and began. "Lena, you will be annoyed that I wrote on this kind of paper. You think good paper makes people behave, and you might be right. I wanted to write this with a clear head and around honest days, not from a place you would have to forgive. Thank you. I don't mean that in the thin way. I mean, you made days. You built them like a person who has learned how to see. I did not deserve that, and I got it anyway, which is the definition of grace. If I had believed in that word before, I would have asked for it. I did not. You brought it without my asking. That is the first thing. The second thing, I would like you to make a larger life. Not in size, in reach. Study. Travel when it makes sense. Work at something that uses the part of you that notices where light should go. I have left you the means to begin because beginnings are hard to buy and easy to waste. Do not waste this. Buy the cheap room with a window before you buy a better coat. Put your name on your pages. Put your name on your days. You taught me that days can be built. I am paying you back by asking you to build yours. The third thing, I would like you to forgive the calendar. Not now. Not soon. When you can. It did not choose for me. I chose. If you need to be angry at me. Then stop. Anger is useful for sharp work and useless for long journeys. You will think of a bridge and a bend. Go and look at those when you need to remember that views arrive. Take someone with you sometimes. Go alone other times. Both are correct. Tell your sister I liked the way she told the cat story badly, and then better. Tell your father his jokes work, despite evidence. Tell your mother she was not wrong to be hard on time. Time is slippery. Tell Evan that competence is a kind of kindness and that he is both. Tell my parents that I was loved and that I was not brave. I was stubborn, which is simply bravery spread over more days. If none of you tell them, it's all right. They already know. There is a cafe on a corner near a bridge where they serve coffee that tastes the way mornings should. You will find it by accident and then pretend you didn't. Take a notebook. Draw the curve of the cup. Listen to people who are not you. This will help. One last request. Do not tidy me into lessons. Keep a few untidy things. Keep the heavy blue mug and use it until the handle smooths at the place your thumb sits. Let a plant die and forgive yourself. Lose a page and redraw it. Live in a way that's not afraid of mess. That is where the good parts hide. That is all. Begin. Hey. Lena did not cry at first. She read it twice, then took a long breath and looked up at the thin blue between the branches. Begin. She folded the letter along the crease and slid it back into the envelope. The paper already felt like a map she had started to learn. She poured coffee from a paper cup into the heavy mug. It was not practical. It was good. She sat like that for a while, sipping, reading the lines she knew she would memorize. A woman with a dog passed and nodded to the mug as if mugs could be cities. Lena nodded back. She put the letter away and walked until her feet knew the streets without asking. She found the cafe he had described without him describing it, the corner with the view, the not too proud coffee, the sound of mornings. She chose a table with a wobble and corrected it with a folded napkin. She drew the handle of the cup. She listened to a couple argue gently and then laugh. She kept not making meaning on purpose, and meaning arrived anyway. In the afternoon, she visited a small museum and looked at fabrics made by people whose names had been lost. She stood in front of a piece stitched with patient repeats and thought about time sewn into shape. She bought a postcard of a pattern that reminded her of rain on a window. On the back she wrote to Cassandra and Thomas. He told me to begin. I am beginning. She did not mail it yet. She wanted to tell them in person first. The last day she walked to a hill and let the city gather at her feet. She drew the rooftops fast, then again slower, this time leaving room for sky. She sent a picture to Evan with a single line. Thank you for the rope bridges. He replied with a photo of the garden at Grana House and the words, the roses are behaving. She smiled and put her phone away. On the train home, she kept the letter on her lap under her hand like a small animal that needed warmth. She looked out the window and saw fields and then saw, without seeing, the shape of a life moving forward. At home, the days fell into place without force. She started the longer program. The first morning she sat in a classroom with 12 strangers and a teacher who said, let's make mistakes on good paper. Lena felt something unclench. She worked for hours and did not notice time there. When the class ended, she walked out into air that smelled of rain and pencil shavings and felt the city as a place that wanted her. She set up a corner in her room with a board and a lamp. The heavy blue mug lived beside the pens. She put the letter in a small wooden box with a shape cut inside for the paper to rest. Sometimes at night, she took it out and read the line about not tidying him into lessons. She would smile and put the envelope back, untidy on purpose. Cassandra and Thomas came to her building on a Saturday morning with flowers not meant for grief, just flowers. The lift creaked like an old door. Her room was small and sunny. She made tea in the blue mug and gave them the other cups. They sat on chairs that did not match and looked at her desk with the gentle pride of people who have learned not to interfere with a good thing. He wrote to me, Lena told them. He told me to begin. She did not read the letter aloud. She told them the parts that were theirs. Cassandra closed her eyes at the line about being proud. Thomas looked at the pattern on the wall, a study of the bend, hidden among leaves, and found the curve without her pointing. We brought you this, Cassandra said. It was a small framed photo. Adrian at the window with that almost smile. Not the polished pictures. The one that felt like him. Only if you want it here. I do, Lena said. She set it on the shelf beside the plant she was trying not to kill. The plant looked unimpressed. I'll do my best, she told it anyway. Evan dropped by with a bag of pears and an electrician's tip for a better lamp bulb. He stood in the doorway and took in the room like a safety check and like a friend. You're all right? He asked, and meant it the way people who have seen many kinds of not all right mean it. I am, she said, and I'm not. Both. Good answer, he said, and left her a note with the name of a market where sellers didn't mind if you asked too many questions about fabric. The first time Lena saw her design printed on paper big enough to cover a wall, she touched it as if it were a living thing and then laughed because, in a way, it was. The pattern carried the curve of a river and a tram bell hidden inside the repeats. A woman at the show stopped and looked closer and said, I didn't see that at first. Lena said, You aren't meant to. Then you are. The woman nodded and wrote Lena's name on her phone. She wrote it down herself later in her notebook anyway, just to see it. An email arrived from a small shop that liked her work. Would she like to design a run of notebooks and scarves? The money was not large. The joy was. She said yes. She stayed up late drawing 3 versions of the same idea, river, bend, view all at once. She signed them L, heart with the thin pen, and did not apologize for liking how it looked. On Sundays, she walked to the headland if the weather allowed and sat for 20 minutes. She did not try to speak to the sea. She let the sea speak. Sometimes children ran past and shouted about nothing. Sometimes a kite fought with the wind and lost politely. She drew the line of the horizon and made it part of something else later. She kept the calendar on her own wall now. The squares were cream and clean. In small letters, at the corners, she wrote words, begin, learn, outside, people, somewhere. She did not put dots on them. She did not need to. The days came without permission, and she answered as she could. When grief rose, she did not push it down. She made tea. She read a page. She let the feeling pass like weather. Sometimes she cried at the sink and let the water hide the sound. Sometimes she woke at 3 and wrote a sentence and slept again. Sometimes she laughed at a joke in the middle of nowhere and did not feel guilty. She told Maya when it felt heavy. Maya listened and did not offer a cure. She came over with the baby, who insisted on chewing the corner of Lena's notebook and then gave it back like a gift. Months turned. The city softened. The house at Granda Street found a new way to be itself. The chessboard stayed on the shelf for a while and then came down. Thomas taught a neighbor boy how to play and lost on purpose twice, and then not on purpose once. Cassandra planted herbs in pots by the kitchen door and started saying the word supper without checking the clock. Evan took 2 weeks off and traveled to a coast with cliffs and sent a photo of the view with the caption, The Bend arrived. Lena wrote back, I can see it. On a cold morning, Lena walked to the post box with a small brown parcel wrapped in paper. It was for Cassandra, 2 notebooks with her pattern on the cover, one with leaves like the balcony, one with tiny squares that hid the word light in the repeat if you knew to look. She slipped the parcel into the red mouth and felt a little lift in her chest. Making things and sending them out. This was a kind of love too. That afternoon, she taught a class at the community center, children and adults together, drawing repeating shapes on printer paper, cutting, flipping, taping, making rough patterns that didn't need to be perfect. A girl with paint on her sleeve found a rhythm and smiled, so wide her face forgot to be shy. A boy who said he couldn't draw made a page of small boats and then colored one red. At the end, a man with careful hands said, I didn't know I could do this. Lena said, You can, and meant more than the page. On the way home, she stopped by the market Evan had told her about. She ran her fingers over cotton and linen and wool. The stallholder did not mind at all. It's a compliment, he said. She bought a fat quarter she did not need and put it carefully in her bag. That evening, the letter came out of its box. She read the last paragraph again. Do not tidy me into lessons. Keep the heavy blue mug. Live in a way that's not afraid of mess. She looked around her small room, the open sketchbook on the desk, a pencil on the floor she hadn't noticed, a plant soldiering on, the mug with a ring at the bottom from tea she had forgotten to finish. Untidy. Alive. She smiled. She sat at the desk and started a new page. In the center she drew a small square, then another, then a third. In the corner of each she wrote tiny words. Light. Music. Outside. Laughter. Somewhere. People. Not as a countdown. As a compass. She added one more at the edge. Begin, again. When she put down the pen, the room felt both full and quiet. She stood, stretched, and walked to the window. The street shone with a thin rain. Someone below ran and then stopped running and laughed. A bus sighed like an old friend. Lena lifted the latch and let the air in. "I'm going to be all right," she said aloud, not to test the sentence, just to hear it. It did not ask for proof. It was a simple truth, like a line that becomes a shape because you keep drawing it. She picked up the heavy blue mug, washed it, and set it to dry. The handle had smoothed in the place her thumb rested. She touched it once and turned off the light. Tomorrow would bring lists and mistakes and lines that needed drawing twice. It would bring class and tea and maybe a new place to sit by the river, a bridge to stand on, a bus to miss. It would bring work. It would bring the ordinary, which is a kind of miracle. It would bring the chance to begin again and again and again. Lena went to bed and slept with the window cracked and the city breathing with her. In her dream, she was on a path that curved left and opened into a view that did not end. She walked, not fast, not slow, and did not look back.